Please don't hit him. I'll take his punishment instead." The words erupted from Maya's small mouth before she even knew she'd spoken them. Her voice trembled, yet it cut through the stale air of the kitchen like a cracked bell. The sharp slap came faster than her thoughts could form. Her face snapped to the side, a bitter sting blooming across her cheek. She didn't cry. Not this time. Karen towered over her, a spatula still wet with dish soap clutched in her hand. Her pale face twisted with irritation, her voice rising. "Maybe if you both acted like decent children, I wouldn't have to keep teaching you lessons." In the corner, little Micah cowered near the trash can, his wide eyes shiny with fear. His trembling hands clutched the hem of his Spider-Man pajama shirt. He was only 5. He didn't understand why cleaning a dropped spoon was suddenly a crime. Maya took a breath, steadying herself. "It was my fault," she whispered. "I knocked it down, not Micah." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Lying now too? Lord help me." Another slap. This one didn't sting as much, but it stole Maya's balance, and she dropped to her knees. The kitchen tiles were cold against her skin. Her palm rested on a crust of dried cereal that had hardened beneath the breakfast table. Micah whimpered. "Stop making that noise," Karen hissed, not even looking at him. "He sounds like a dying dog." Maya clenched her teeth. Not today. Not in front of him. The front door creaked open. All three froze. Bootsteps echoed across the hardwood floor. Heavy, tired, uneven. Maya knew the rhythm. "Daddy." Daryl paused in the entryway, briefcase in hand, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled. He smelled of long hours and cheap bourbon. His eyes met Karen's first, then drifted to Maya still kneeling, then finally to Micah, who had curled into himself like a frightened rabbit. "What's going on?" Daryl asked, voice hoarse. Karen's tone switched instantly, like flipping a switch. The kids were being careless again. Spilled juice. Broke a spoon. I had to raise my voice. Daryl stared for a beat too long. His gaze flicked back to Maya's red cheek, then to the spatula. A silence stretched between them. Maya rose slowly to her feet, wobbling slightly. "Daddy, I'm tired," Daryl cut in. "We'll talk later." And then he walked past them. Past Karen. Past his daughter's swollen cheek, and his son's fearful eyes. The door to the bedroom clicked shut behind him. Micah let out a soft, confused whimper. Maya blinked. She didn't know what stung more, Karen's slap or her father's silence. Later that night, Maya helped Micah wash his hands and brush his teeth. The boy leaned against her as she tied his blanket around his shoulders like a cape. It was too thin for the autumn cold creeping through the window cracks. "You were brave," Micah whispered. She tucked him in. "No," she said. "I was just louder." "Mel." He nodded like that made sense. Down the hall, she could hear their father's footsteps. Then the TV. Then nothing. Maya curled up on the mattress on the floor beside her brother's bed. The ceiling above her had a water stain shaped like a question mark. She stared at it until her eyes blurred. She remembered when the house used to be filled with music, her mother's hum while cooking, her dad's baritone singing in the shower. Now, silence echoed louder than anything. When their mom died 2 years ago, Daryl crumbled. And when Karen moved in 6 months later, he didn't come back. Not really. Not fully. A child doesn't always know how to name grief, but she can recognize when love leaves the room. Karen hadn't always been cruel. At first, she smiled too much, brought cookies, wore perfume that smelled like cherries. But little things shifted. Chores became demands. Demands became insults. Then came the first slap. Nobody asked Maya if she was okay. Not the teacher who saw her wince when adjusting her backpack. Not the neighbor who saw her take out the trash in December without a coat. Not even Daryl. In the early hours of the morning, a siren moaned somewhere far away. Maya's thoughts drifted. She imagined what a later might feel like, the kind Daddy kept promising. "We'll go to the park later. We'll get pizza later. We'll talk later." But later never showed up, only now, and now was bruised and quiet. She turned to look at Micah's small back rising and falling under the blanket. His breathing was soft, peaceful, innocent. Maya whispered into the dark, "I'll keep you safe. I promise." In the other room, Daryl sat alone in the dark, the TV remote dangling from his fingers. He stared at the blank screen. Karen was already asleep, unmoved, unbothered. He had seen the redness on Maya's face. He had chosen not to ask. He told himself he was tired, that maybe Karen hadn't meant it. That discipline was different from abuse, that maybe it was all in Maya's imagination. He sipped from a glass of whiskey and tried to forget the way his daughter flinched when he walked by. The guilt curled in his chest like smoke. He pressed his knuckles to his temple. Tomorrow, he murmured. But tomorrow wouldn't fix what he ignored today. And somewhere, behind a cracked door, Maya waited not for justice, not for miracles, but for her father to finally see her. And stay. The next morning came quietly, slipping into the house like a hesitant guest. Sunlight crawled through the worn blinds of Maya and Micah's small room, casting pale lines across the faded floor. Maya opened her eyes before the alarm clock buzzed. Her cheek still ached, though the pain had settled into a dull throb, more memory than sensation now. She reached up and touched it gently, then pulled the blanket higher over Micah's sleeping body. She sat up slowly. The floor was cold. Her socks were thin and full of holes. But she'd grown used to the sting of bare wood underfoot. She stood, stretched without a sound, and tiptoed toward the kitchen. It was 6:12 a.m. The house was still. Karen never woke before 7 unless she had something to complain about. Daryl never came out until he had to. Maya took her chance. She wanted to make Micah oatmeal, real oatmeal, not the clumps of dry cereal they usually got. She didn't know how much time she had. She opened the pantry and stood on her tiptoes to reach the last packet of instant oats. As she stirred water into a chipped bowl and placed it in the microwave, she listened for footsteps, for the sound of that voice that never yelled. It snapped, like cold rubber against skin. 2 minutes. She could do this. The microwave beeped. She flinched instinctively, then caught herself. It was just a sound. Not every sharp noise meant pain. Still, she moved fast. She scooped the oatmeal into 2 small bowls and added a spoonful of honey she had hidden in the back of the cabinet. Micah shuffled into the room, rubbing his eyes, curls sticking out in every direction. He smiled sleepily when he saw her. "Oatmeal?" he asked, voice small. "With honey," she whispered, handing him a spoon. "But don't tell." He sat at the table, feet dangling above the floor, and dug in. She watched him for a moment, watched him eat without fear, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Something warm, brief, almost like safety. Then came the voice. "Well, look at this little breakfast party." Maya froze. Karen stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her bathrobe hanging loosely over a wrinkled nightgown. Her blonde hair was matted on one side, her lips pursed with distaste. "Did you ask permission to use my food?" she snapped. Maya turned, steadying herself. "I just wanted to feed Micah. He's been sick." Karen stepped forward. "Sick because he's weak, just like you." Maya said nothing. She had learned that silence was safer than arguing. Karen walked over, picked up the second bowl, and dumped its contents into the sink. "I guess you're not hungry anymore," she said, eyes glinting. Micah looked down at his bowl. His hand trembled. Maya stepped between them, placing her hand on Micah's shoulder. "He's just a kid," she said, her voice low. Karen leaned in. "And you're just a mouthy brat." She turned and walked away. Daryl was still asleep or pretending to be. Maya didn't check. She cleaned up the oatmeal, took Micah's hand, and led him outside. The chill of the morning bit at their skin, but she didn't care. The air out there was quiet, and even cold peace was better than warmth under her roof. They sat on the back steps, Maya pulling her hoodie tight around Micah's small frame. "Why's she so mad all the time?" he asked softly. Maya didn't answer right away. The truth was a knot in her chest. "I don't know," she said finally, "but it's not your fault." Micah nodded. "I had a dream last night. Mom was in it." Maya's throat tightened. "Yeah?" She said we'd be okay. Maya looked at him, into those big, honest eyes. "I think she's right," she whispered. "If you feel Maya's hope in this moment, give her a like, and don't forget to comment where you're watching from. Who knows, someone nearby might be watching along with you right now." Later that day, after Karen left for her shift at the diner, Daryl emerged from his bedroom. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't say good morning. He poured coffee into a stained mug and sat at the kitchen table. Maya stood by the sink, drying dishes. He cleared his throat. Was she rough with you this morning? Maya didn't turn around. It doesn't matter. It does, he said. Now she turned. Since when? Daryl looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in weeks. Maybe months. I'm trying, he said. She stared at him. Her face was unreadable. You're late. He looked away. I didn't know how bad it got, he said. Maya crossed her arms. You didn't want to know. Micah peeked into the room from the hallway, then stepped back. Daryl sighed. You should be in school. It's Saturday, Maya said. He blinked. Right. A long pause. He stood, walked toward her, then stopped halfway. If something happens again, you come to me, okay? Maya's voice was quiet. You'll be here? He nodded. She didn't believe him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was something. That evening, Karen returned home in a foul mood. She muttered about tips and lazy customers. The kids kept their distance. Daryl said little. And when Karen complained about Maya being disrespectful, he didn't back her up. Maya noticed. She didn't smile, but something in her posture changed, less guarded, slightly taller. Micah slept early that night, curled against Maya's side like a cat seeking warmth. She stroked his hair and stared at the ceiling again. The water stain had spread. It looked more like a teardrop now. Her father had noticed her face, had said something, had not defended Karen. It wasn't justice, but it was more than silence. And sometimes, a whisper is where a scream begins. The rain started just after midnight. A soft, steady tapping against the roof. Maya awoke to it, the sound filling the small room like a whispering reminder that the world outside still existed. Micah was fast asleep beside her, breathing deeply, his small hand resting against her arm. She stared at the ceiling again. The water stain had grown darker now. The shape was no longer just a question mark or a teardrop, it looked like something watching. She rose slowly, careful not to wake Micah. She walked barefoot to the kitchen, wrapped in her hoodie, her arms folded tight. The air was damp, chilled by the leaky windows. She poured herself a glass of water from the tap and sipped it slowly. The living room light flicked on. Daryl stood in the doorway. He looked older in that moment, the shadows highlighting every crease of guilt on his face. He didn't say anything right away. Maya didn't either. After a moment, he broke the silence. Can't sleep? She shrugged. It's the rain. He nodded. Yeah, it gets loud sometimes in this house. Another pause. I heard Karen yelling earlier, he said, stepping forward. She yells every day. Maya replied flatly. He looked down at the floor, ashamed. That's not how it's supposed to be. No, she said. It's not. I'm trying to fix it. You always say that. I know. No. He sat down at the table, motioned for her to join him. She did, reluctantly. When your mama passed, he began, and his voice cracked. I thought I had to hold it together. For you. For Micah. But the truth is, I fell apart. Maya watched him. This wasn't the usual avoidance. He wasn't hiding behind TV noise or whiskey. He was just broken. I thought maybe Karen could help. She seemed strong, put together. I didn't want to be alone, but I didn't see what she was doing to you. Maya looked away. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. You saw it, she whispered. You just didn't stop it. Daryl swallowed hard. You're right. She didn't expect that. I was weak, and I'm sorry. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small, creased photograph. It was of Maya and Micah, as toddlers, both smiling, covered in birthday cake frosting. Their mother stood behind them, laughing. Her eyes sparkled. Maya stared at it. I found this last night, he said. I hadn't seen it in years. Your mama would never have let this happen. Maja blinked quickly. No, she said. She wouldn't. I want to be better. I need to be. For you. For him. She looked at him, searching for cracks in his sincerity. For once, she didn't see any. You're still here, she said finally. That's something. I plan to stay. A soft sound made them both turn. Micah stood in the hallway, rubbing his eyes, his small figure barely lit by the kitchen lamp. I had a bad dream, he mumbled. Maya opened her arms, and he ran to her. She scooped him into her lap. Daryl watched them, emotion catching in his throat. "You hungry, buddy?" he asked softly. Micah nodded. "I think we still got some peanut butter," Daryl said, standing. "Let's see what we can make." He began to move around the kitchen, quietly opening cabinets. Maya watched him closely. There was something unfamiliar in the way he moved, intentional, quiet, like he was learning how to exist in his own home again. Micah sat on Maya's lap, eyes fluttering shut. She rested her chin on his curls. Daryl set down a plate of crackers with peanut butter in front of them. Not gourmet, but it's something. Maya almost smiled. Almost, as they sat there. The three of them under the dim light. Maya realized it was the first time in months they'd shared a moment that wasn't tense, wasn't full of held breath and quiet dread. Just a father, a daughter, and a son, sitting in the dark, eating crackers. The moment didn't erase the bruises or the memories, but it softened something inside her. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The next morning, Karen noticed the shift. Daryl didn't leave for work early. He sat at the table, sipping coffee, talking to the kids. When Karen scolded Maya for leaving dishes in the sink, Daryl interrupted. "She's a child. Not your maid." Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said calmly. Maya watched, wide-eyed. Karen stared at him for a long second, then laughed bitterly. "Oh, so now you care." "I always cared," Daryl said. "I just stopped showing it. But that ends now." Karen scoffed and grabbed her purse. "Fine. Have it your way." She slammed the door behind her. Silence returned. But this time, it felt different. "Can we go to the park today?" Micah asked. Maya held her breath. Daryl looked at both of them. "Yeah, we can go." It was just a park, just a promise. But for the first time in a long time, Maya believed he might keep it. The park wasn't anything special. Just a worn-out patch of grass behind a faded elementary school, with one creaky swing set, a rusted slide, and a crooked bench half-eaten by moss. But to Micah, it might as well have been Disneyland. He ran ahead of Maya and Daryl, his little legs pumping, his laughter bouncing off the empty basketball court like music. Maya followed behind, arms crossed, eyes cautious. Daryl trailed them both, hands in his pockets, taking everything in like it was his first time seeing it all. Maya hadn't been to this park since before her mother died. They used to come here on Saturdays with a picnic basket and apple slices, and her mom would lay a blanket down and hum Marvin Gaye under her breath. Now, the memory felt like it belonged to another life, one buried too deep to reach without pain. Micah climbed the ladder of the jungle gym with the determined clumsiness of a 5-year-old. Maya hovered nearby, just in case. "You don't have to stay so close," Daryl said gently, sitting on the bench. "I do," she replied. He nodded. He didn't push. For a while, they just sat in silence. The wind teasing the hem of Maya's hoodie, the autumn leaves gathering around Daryl's boots. A couple of crows squawked in the distance, arguing over an abandoned sandwich wrapper. "Your mother loved this place," Daryl said, breaking the silence. Maya said nothing. "She used to make up stories for you here. About knights and space queens. You remember that?" "I remember," she said. "I used to think it was silly, all that pretending, but she told me once that stories were how kids learned to believe in something before the world taught them not to." Maya looked over at him. She also believed in telling the truth. Daryl flinched, just a little. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She did." Micah called down from the monkey bars. "Daddy, look." Daryl stood and walked over, cheering him on as Micah swung like a tiny trapeze artist. Maya watched them, feeling the edges of her heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. "He's trying," she told herself, "but trying doesn't erase what happened." When they returned home later that afternoon, Karen's car was already in the driveway. Maya's stomach dropped. Daryl noticed. "It's okay," he said. "I'm here." Maya didn't answer, but she didn't slow down either. Inside, Karen was in the kitchen, smoking by the window, the sour smell already thick in the air. She turned when they entered, eyes narrowing. "Where have you been?" she asked. "We went to the park," Daryl replied, calm. "You didn't even tell me?" "I didn't think I had to." Karen let out a dry laugh. "I see. So now you're father of the year?" Daryl stepped forward. "You and I need to talk." Karen crossed her arms. Oh, now we're having conversations? In private. She looked him up and down, then nodded once and walked toward the bedroom. Daryl followed, and the door shut behind them. Maya stood in the hallway with Micah clinging to her leg. She couldn't hear the words through the door, just the tones Karen's rising, sharp and accusatory. Daryl's lower, firmer than she'd heard in a long time. The sound of something slamming a drawer, maybe. Then silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The door opened. Karen emerged first, face flushed, lips tight, eyes dark. "You'll regret this," she muttered, mostly to herself. She grabbed her purse and stormed past the children, without a glance. Daryl stepped out after her. His shoulders were stiff, his jaw set. But he looked relieved. "She's not coming back," he said. Maya stared at him. "You told her to leave?" "I did." Micah looked up at his sister. "Is it over?" Maya didn't know how to answer that. Daryl crouched beside them. "I know I should have done it sooner, but I'm not letting her hurt you again. Either of you." Maya wanted to believe him. She really did. But something inside her refused to let go of the years of silence. She nodded anyway. That night, the house was quiet in a different way. No footsteps stomping through the hallway. No bitter voice shouting about chores or complaints. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft snoring of Micah in the other room. Maya stood at the kitchen sink, washing the dinner dishes, spaghetti and green beans. Daryl's idea of a fresh start. He walked in, drying his hands on a towel. "You don't have to do all that." "I don't mind." "You shouldn't have to," he said. "Not anymore." She turned to look at him. "What happens now?" "We rebuild," he said, "together, one day at a time." Maya looked down at her hands in the suds. They were raw and small, and too used to doing things girls her age shouldn't have to do, but they were strong, too. She nodded slowly. Outside, the rain had stopped. The next morning brought an unfamiliar stillness. The air inside the house felt lighter, as if something had been exhaled after being held in too long. The smell of cigarette smoke had faded. No sharp heels clacked against the hardwood floor. No insults lingered in the corners of the kitchen. For the first time in months, Maya woke up without fear curling in her chest. She stretched on the mattress beside Micah's bed, blinking in the soft sunlight streaming through the blinds. Her cheek, once bruised, had faded to a shadow of yellow. Her body still carried memories of pain, but today, her mind didn't brace for it. Micah was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the rug with his toy cars lined up in formation. He looked up when he saw her stirring. "She's really gone?" he asked. "Yeah," Maya said. "She island." Micah nodded once, solemn as a judge. "Good." They went into the kitchen together, barefoot, the wood warm from the morning Sunday. Daryl was already there, standing over the stove in his work shirt and tie, flipping pancakes that looked more like shapes than circles. He glanced back and smiled. "Hope y'all like 'em crispy." Micah giggled. Maya didn't, but she didn't scowl either. They sat at the table, and Daryl placed 2 plates in front of them, each with a misshapen pancake and a drizzle of syrup. He joined them, pouring coffee into a cracked mug. For a while, they just ate. No shouting. No silence born of tension. Just forks clinking against porcelain. "You kids okay?" Daryl asked. Micah nodded. Maya hesitated, then gave the smallest shrug. "We're better." "Huh." Daryl sipped his coffee. "I know that's not everything, but it's a start." After breakfast, he stood and grabbed his keys. "I've got work, but I'll be home by 6. No more staying out late." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Really," he said, "and we'll figure something out for after school, all right? You shouldn't be taking care of Micah all the time. That's my job." Maya didn't respond, but something in her chest loosened. He bent down to kiss Micah's head, then hesitated by Maya's chair. "You good?" She looked up at him. "We'll see." He nodded, accepting that. Then he left. The door shut gently. Micah turned to Maya. "Want to build a fort?" She smiled. "Let's do it." They spent the rest of the morning dragging every blanket they owned into the living room, stacking cushions, flipping chairs upside down. The living room transformed into a castle of quilts and couch cushions. Micah ruled it with a plastic sword and a paper crown. Maya was his knight, sworn to protect the kingdom from dragons and shadows. She laughed more than she had in months. But as the afternoon waned and the sun tilted west, shadows grew long again. Maya sat by the window, the fort now a lazy pile of cloth and pillows behind her. Micah napped, curled up beneath a blanket. She watched the empty street, quiet except for a neighbor mowing his lawn 2 houses down. She remembered a time when life felt this simple, when her biggest worry was whether her bike's chain would pop or if she'd get the red popsicle instead of the orange. Those days seemed like scenes from a movie she barely remembered starring someone who looked like her. A car pulled into the driveway. Daryl was home early. It was barely 4:30. Maya opened the door before he could knock. He smiled sheepishly, holding 2 plastic bags from the grocery store. "Thought I'd try something different tonight," he said. "You like baked chicken?" "Sure." He walked in, dropped the bags on the kitchen counter. "And, I grabbed some real oatmeal too. Not the packets." Maya's lips twitched. "Michael liked that." Daryl nodded. "Good." He pulled out celery, potatoes, seasoning, moving with purpose. "I used to cook with your mom," he said after a moment. "She was better at it, of course, but I helped." Maya looked over. "I remember, you used to burn the garlic bread." "Every time," he chuckled. "She'd tease me about it." She turned back to the window. "I liked watching you two." The room fell quiet again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full. Full of memory. Full of a mutual grief. Neither of them had spoken aloud in a long time. "I missed you," Daryl said suddenly. Maya didn't turn around. "I know I wasn't there. I didn't protect you. That's on me, and I know saying sorry doesn't fix it." "No. You left," she said, her voice thin. "Even when you were in the house, you left." "I know." He wiped his hands on a dish towel, walked over, and sat beside her. "I can't undo what happened, but I can stay now, and I will. No more waiting for later." Maya finally looked at him. "You don't get to leave again," she said. "Not ever." "I won't." His eyes didn't waver, neither did hers. Dinner that night wasn't perfect. He overcooked the chicken. Forgot to season the green beans, but they all sat together. Micah told stories about his imaginary kingdom. Maya corrected him with a smile. Daryl listened like it was gospel, and as they cleared the dishes together, Maya realized something she hadn't dared believe. Maybe this wasn't just temporary. Maybe they were becoming a family again. The next week moved differently. The house was still old, the walls still thin, but the silence inside had changed. It no longer pressed against Maya's chest like a weight. It felt open, like breath. Every morning, Daryl was up before the kids, dressed and shaved, breakfast on the stove, scrambled eggs or toast, sometimes just cereal, but always something. He started driving Maya and Micah to school instead of leaving them to walk. He even remembered Micah's lunchbox one morning when Maya forgot. He didn't talk much about the past, and Maya didn't ask. They had an unspoken agreement. The scars were there, but they didn't have to bleed to be real. It was Thursday afternoon when Maya noticed the envelope on the kitchen counter. She and Micah had just gotten home from school. He ran to his room, mumbling something about finishing a Lego spaceship. Maya stayed behind, drawn to the handwriting on the envelope. Her name was written on the front, just Maya. No sweetheart, no darling. Just her name, steady, clean, clear. She opened it. Inside was a sheet of paper-lined notebook paper, folded neatly. "Maya, I know I can't undo what's happened. I know I've failed you in ways I'll never fully understand. But I'm writing this because sometimes speaking doesn't come out right, and I need you to hear this without looking away. You're not supposed to carry the weight you've been carrying. You're not supposed to be the protector, the cook, the cleaner, the parent. That was never supposed to be your job. It was mine, and I gave it away to grief, to fear, to silence. You kept this house standing while I was gone, even when I was still here. That strength? It didn't come from me. It came from your mother. You have her eyes, her stubbornness, her heart, and I thank God every day for that. From now on, we're going to rebuild this house emotionally, not just the leaky roof. And I want you to know that this is your home. You're safe here. I promise you that. And I won't let anyone hurt you or Micah again. You don't have to forgive me yet. Or trust me. But I'm going to earn it. one day at a time. Love, Dad. Maya stared at the letter until the words blurred. She blinked quickly, wiped her eyes, and folded the letter back into the envelope. Then, gently, she placed it in the drawer next to the phone where her mom used to keep her favorite recipes. That night, she didn't mention the letter to Daryl, but she let him help with her science project. She didn't flinch when he sat too close, and when he tucked Micah in, she stood in the doorway instead of pretending to read in the kitchen. The next few days fell into something that felt like routine. Predictable, almost peaceful, until Saturday morning came. Maya was pouring milk into a bowl of cereal when the knock sounded at the door. Not the casual knock of a neighbor. This was louder, firm. She froze. Daryl walked in from the living room, frowning. "You expecting someone?" "No," Maya said quickly. Micah peeked out from behind the hallway, sensing the tension. Daryl opened the door. Standing on the porch was a tall woman in a stiff navy blazer, clipboard in hand. Her smile was tight, professional. "Mr. Turner?" "Yes?" "My name's Miss Alvarez. I'm from Child Protective Services. Do you have a moment to speak?" Maya's breath caught. She nearly dropped the milk jug. Daryl stiffened. Sure. What's this about?" "It's just a routine follow-up regarding a call we received last month. May I come in?" She didn't wait for his answer. She stepped inside, her eyes sweeping the room, taking in every detail: the peeling paint on the walls, the mismatched chairs, the cereal bowls on the table. Maya stepped protectively in front of Micah. Daryl gestured toward the living room. "We can talk in here." "Miss." Alvarez nodded and followed him, but not before glancing over her shoulder at Maya. "I'll speak with you in a moment too, Maya." Maya felt her stomach twist.